Have you ever wondered what a career in psychology looks like for you? Or what it really takes to thrive in teaching and mentorship?
In this episode of the Enriched Mindset Podcast, we sit down with Dr. Ashley Waggoner Denton, the University of Toronto's first undergraduate faculty advisor in the Department of Psychology.
She also conducts research at the intersection of social psychology and pedagogy, with work published in leading journals such as the Social Psychology of Education and Psychology Learning and Teaching.
What inspired you to pursue a role in the teaching stream, and how did that passion evolve over time?
I realized that I was like, oh, I really like this. Like, this is what I love. And so at that point, I was like, you know what? I think I want a career still in academia, but some career that's going to allow me to spend most of my time on teaching and less time focused on research and grant writing and all of that other.
Dr. Waggoner Denton opens up about how she found her love for teaching, shares advice she often gives her students, and talks about what it means to make thoughtful choices, whether it's how you study, plan your career, or handle your finances.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lee.
And I'm Emilia.
And welcome to the Enriched Mindset Podcast.
Today, we're so excited to welcome someone who's not only an expert in social psychology, but also a passionate educator who's helped shape the academic and career journeys of countless students. She's known for blending research, pedagogy, and mentorship in a powerful way. Please welcome Dr. Ashley Waggoner Denton.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for joining us. Before we jump into your amazing work in teaching and career development, we've got a couple of psych-related dad jokes to break the ice.
Okay. Why don't emotionally avoidant skeletons confront their partners?
No idea.
Because they don't have the guts.
All right, here's another one. What did the grape say in therapy about being stepped on by all his friends?
No clue.
No clue? Nothing. He just let out a little whine. All right. So first question here is, what inspired you to pursue a role in the teaching stream, and how did that passion evolve over time?
Yeah, so I went to grad school, to study PhD, to get my PhD in social psychology because I loved research. I got so into it in undergrad. I just couldn't imagine doing anything else. And so it was about halfway through my PhD program, in the third year of my PhD program, where they had a sort of mandatory class on teaching, and all of the graduate students in like the third year cohort taught little sections of what was like their second year research methods course, their undergraduate course. And so that was my first real teaching experience. Yeah, there's like two little lab sections. And I realized that I was like, oh, I really like this. Like, this is what I love. And then looking back, it was like, okay, like my mom was a teacher. She was a high school math teacher. My sister didn't end up in teaching, but she went and she like has her teaching degree, and she like supply taught for a little while. And I was like, okay, like obviously teaching is like in my blood somehow. And so at that point I was like, you know what? I think I want a career still in academia, but some career that's going to allow me to spend most of my time on teaching and less time focused on research and grant writing and all of that other piece. And so I was like, okay, well, let's just get as much teaching experience as I can as a graduate student to try to build up that CV that I'm going to need on the market. And honestly, at that time, and I went to grad school in Indiana at IU University, and I thought I was going to end up at like a small liberal arts like college in the middle of nowhere. My husband's American. And so I was thinking like, I don't know, because the teaching stream positions didn't really exist back then the way that they do now. So I was kind of prepared for anything. And then, fast forward a couple of years, I'm writing up my dissertation. I'm like, I'm just going to test out the job market, see what's out there, what happens. And U of T, which is where I did my undergrad and is home essentially for me, was hiring. So at the time it was a lecturer position. They ended up transferring them into like these teaching stream positions. And I was like, okay. And so I applied, I interviewed, I got the job, and I like told my husband, I'm like, we're moving to Toronto, like we're moving back home. Finish up this postdoc that you're doing and let's move on. And I just so I just kind of fell in love with teaching as a grad student and switched gears to focus myself on like getting the type of experience that I would need for that type of teaching focused career.
What first sparked your interest in psychology in the first place?
Oh gosh. So I was in high school, and we didn't have any, the Ontario high school curriculum at the time had like zero psychology in it whatsoever. So my favorite class in high school was biology. I loved biology. And then one day my mom came home with this random psychology textbook that I forget, it was like her school library, some library was getting rid of. And she was like, do you want to take a look at this? And I was like, sure. And so I remember just like flipping through this random psychology textbook and being like, oh my God, this is it. Like, this is what I want to do. And so it was like late in high school, and I was like pretty sure that I wanted to get into psychology, even though I'd like never taken a psychology class. Ended up going to U of T, took Psych 100, and was like, yep, I was definitely right. There's absolutely nothing else I want to do. And it was just like psychology all the way.
Yeah.
Although it took me a little while to land on social psychology.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because, at least in my experience in grad school and as an undergrad, most of the profs weren't actually interested in teaching. They were so focused on research and saw teaching as kind of like a thing they had to do. So what's your perspective on that when you look at, I guess, other professors?
Yeah, I mean, there's a real mixed bag, right? There are some faculty who are like that for sure. When I think about the faculty like in my own department, obviously there's like the teaching stream folks who are very much into teaching, but then even our tenure stream or research stream faculty really take their teaching seriously. Okay. Like there's so many folks who really truly care about, undergraduate education. And that's true across the university, like not just in psychology. So you get the odd ones who are just doing it because they literally, they have to do it. It's part of their job. But for the most part, I think so many faculty really do like take it seriously, and they care about it.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see. And I think the teaching stream, now that there are, both research stream and teaching stream faculty, I think we're rubbing off as well into, onto the research stream faculty, helping them out and like helping them see how important the teaching aspect. And like none of us have jobs if there aren't undergrads who want to go there and take your classes and all that.
Right.
Yeah.
I believe that you told us that you took a year off after your undergrad.
Yes.
So how did that shape your decision going into grad school and your career trajectory?
Yeah, so it didn't really change my trajectory a lot. It really helped me figure out specifically which programs I wanted to apply to. So it, gave me that breathing room to be like, okay, slow down. Like I don't have to fill out all of these applications and be taking these courses and doing my honors thesis and doing all of these things that I was doing in like the fall of my fourth year. So it allowed me to kind of slow down, take a beat, back then we had to do the GREs, back then, and to just do research, like do a lot of research into all the different programs that are out there and figure out, who's going to be able to take students in the following year, right? Touch base with some faculty members. I went to like a conference and was able to meet with a lot of folks. So it really helped me put my best foot forward, I think, in terms of like my grad school application. I worked in the same building that I'm in right now, like as a research coordinator. So I got some additional experience, but it was also just really, really nice to not be in school, right? I could just go home at the end of the day and like not think about anything else, like have fun. So it was just a really nice time. And I highly recommend. And then I was like well rested and felt really well prepared, ready to hit the ground running.
Okay, well, that was a little twist. Okay. All right. I'll go to the next question then. Okay. So you've been recognized for teaching excellence and won the 2019 Jane S. Hallinan Teaching Excellence Award. So can you tell us a bit about your approach to course design? How do you make it accessible and impactful?
Yeah, so a lot of it obviously depends on the particular course that we're talking about. Definitely a proponent of backward design. So thinking about, what are the takeaways I want the students to have, right? Those outcomes I want them to walk away with at the end. And then thinking about, so how do we get them there? Like what activities, right? What assessments do we need to do that are going to assess these particular learning outcomes that I want students to walk away with from the course, and then how best to deliver, the content that's needed. And so is it going to be, again, depending on the course, might be a lot of lecturing, like my giant Psych 100 course, for example, it might be a lot more class discussions or class activities or small group work, really depending on the course. So just really sort of thinking carefully about what are starting with like the learning outcomes basically, and then kind of working backward from there.
So I think intro psych is a class that a lot of students take, not just psych majors.
For sure.
So how do you like make it meaningful for those who aren't necessarily in psychology?
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the things that makes psych such a popular first year course is that it's really easy for students to apply the material, right, to their own lives, to what they're doing. I think more so than a lot of the other, the first year chemistry course or something. So it's really easy, I think, to engage with the students, to allow them to recognize, these principles and concepts as they're at play in their own lives. And so I love the course. And so that comes across when I'm, sort of lecturing in the big class, coming up with my own examples. I'll make connections to how I see this playing out in my own life, or how I've used this to, improve some aspect of what I do. And then, in terms of, trying to come up with assessments that are, again, engaging and allow the students to think and to do something a little bit real. So I'm a big proponent of like authentic assessments, and this is going beyond Psych 100, but like in all the courses that I teach, trying to come up with assignments where the students aren't just, in some classes there are just like tests taking and stuff like that, but coming up with like deliverables that actually have meaning like outside of the classroom. So something that they could potentially use or something. So in Psych 100, I have students come up with like a multiple choice question that they then share with like everyone else. And so they get this pool of practice questions that they can use. And so it has a purpose outside of just them doing the activity itself.
Yeah.
Right.
When we take courses, students are often asked to give feedback, and also there's like unsolicited feedback on like Rate My Prof, for example. So can you just talk about what role student feedback plays in shaping teaching practices?
Yeah, so for sure. So not so much Rate My Professor, I avoid that. And I sometimes have faculty members who look at it, they're like, oh, something weird is going on with yours. I've reported it. And I'm like, okay, thanks. I have no idea what's going on there. Because you get weird stuff going on there. But of course, I take student feedback is really helpful, especially with shaping things like the assessments, right? So if you get feedback from, multiple students that are like, the instructions were really unclear on this assignment, right? Or I wish there was a clearer rubric, right? And that type of thing. And I'm like, oh, and then I improve it for the next time. Once I had a student, so a course that I sometimes teach, I haven't been able to teach it in a couple of years, but it was like a first year seminar, the psychology of student success. And we go through all sorts of different materials, but we didn't spend a week, we didn't talk about group work, even though they do like this group work assignment, and even though they're going to do group work all through. And a student was like, that would have been really helpful. And I was reading through that and being like, oh my God, how did I miss this? Like, of course there should be like a week where we talk about like, effective collaboration and group work. So I love constructive, criticism and feedback from students. And I definitely, and lots of other instructors feel the same way, of course, take that into consideration when you're, making changes the next time you go through the course, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. In your experience, what are the most common misconceptions that students may have about pursuing a career in psychology or just psychology in general?
Definitely, and this was true in my case too, like I started out thinking only of clinical, right? Or like thinking of the clinical pathway, right? Clinical counseling type stuff. And so I think there's still a misconception that like, that's the only thing you can do, right? A psychology degree, which is so not true, as we all in this room, I'm sure. And still like are you reading my mind, or like, are you analyzing me right now? Like, that still, that like kind of comes up all the time, where students will be, ask me like, are you like assessing me? Or they'll come to me with like their problems. I'm like, I'm not that type of psychologist. So definitely some misconceptions that still persist out there.
A lot of undergrads get really scared of stats courses or like research heavy courses.
Yes.
Do you have any strategies you can recommend to help students become more confident when they approach these subjects?
Yeah, in terms of statistics, it's been a while since I taught it, but there's a lot of statistics anxiety, right? Mathematics anxiety. And with stats, it's really, I'm like, this isn't a math course. It's all about just understanding at the conceptual level, like what's going on here. And I'll share my own stories. Like, I felt really, like I was really stressed about stats, or I did really poor. I remember in undergrad and like bombing a test that, and just being like, we're going to take it step by step, right? So really just breaking everything down, starting from like the very, very basics. And as long as students, sort of keep up with the material, right? You go through, you engage in the practice, take advantage of whatever resources the instructor has made available to you. Don't be afraid to go and ask for help, right? Like there's so much support available to students on campus that most of the time they're like not even aware of. So like obvious things like office hours, right? Or going to see your TA, But then outside of that, like I send students all the time to like go talk with a learning strategist, go talk, there are these like peer support, or like if you don't feel uncomfortable talking to a professor, talk to a peer who's like been through this before. And so I like have my list of like all the different sorts of like learning resources that are available on campus. Like don't be afraid to go ask for help. Like there's so much help out there, but you have to take that step to go, right? It's not going to like fall into your lap.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Maybe on the topic of like study methods, we have a little bit of a slideshow for you.
Oh gosh, okay.
So pretty much it's called Ick or Stick for study methods. So the rules are that you have to answer the question within 20 seconds, say yes or no, and then obviously have fun. So
Oh gosh.
you want to read out the...
Oh gosh. Okay. So passive highlighting. So that's ick. That's no. Passive anything is basically going to be a no. Do you want me to elaborate on these or do you want me to float through? Yeah. So passive highlighting, I will see students where you end up highlighting like the whole page, right? Or like the whole chapter of your textbook. And there's been some studies, or at least one study where they had, they took like a chapter of a textbook and gave it to students and then gave it to the professor and were like, highlight what you think are like the important parts of this chapter. And there was like very little overlap between what the instructor thought was the important material and what the students thought was important. So highlighting, it's not great for remembering anything, so there might be some situations where it's going to make sense, but yes, isn't it just a general or main study strategy? Definitely not.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Spaced repetition, definite yes, huge yes, do this. So the spaced is spaced repetition. So that's, so not studying in like massive crammed sessions, right? But taking the time to go back and kind of, look at things over time. So that's definitely something that you want to do, right? So instead of taking like a 2-hour, that doesn't take any more time. It takes a little bit more time to plan out, maybe initially, but overall you're still going to, let's say, study for 3 hours, but break it up into like 30-minute sessions versus like a 3-hour block for sure. Okay. Using one study style. Probably no, because there's so many different subjects that you might be studying for where one style might work best for, studying for one particular type of test or exam versus another. So I would say kind of mix things up, especially if you're not quite sure what works best for you yet. And a lot of students, especially like first year at university, it's like a whole new world. It can be very different. Like the studying that worked for you in high school, you may find out doesn't work, right? No longer flies in university. And so be willing to kind of learn some new study strategies and try some new things out for sure. Creating a dedicated study space. Yes, for sure. That can be really helpful, right? And that's your space. You don't want it, don't have it be on your bed. Don't have it be right in a place that you associate with other, non-studying things. So I think creating a nice dedicated study space, whether it's going out to a particular coffee shop, I was never that kind of person, but whatever works well for you, that has the materials that you need, that has the silence or the right level of kind of dull background noise that you need. Yeah, for sure. What else we got? Oh, okay. Note-taking on a laptop versus pen and paper / iPad. So there's been a whole lot of studies on this, and that's sort of like going back and forth. So at first it was like, oh my gosh, the laptop, like typing is terrible and no one should be doing that. And you should be, we should all go back to like sort of pen and paper notes. And I think, again, the key thing here is thinking about how much you're engaging with the material. So if you are taking notes and you're just like verbatim, like typing down, like word for word what your instructor is saying, and you're not even thinking about what it is, that's not going to be very helpful. But when you are, regardless if it's, iPad, pen and pencil, on your laptop, whatever, if you are thinking carefully about the notes that you're taking, you're adding in your own sort of questions or examples and things, right? Again, if you're like sort of actively engaging with the material, that's going to serve you well. So yeah, kind of studying without breaks. No, you definitely want to take breaks. Although I know I've talked with some students about this and they're like, no, I can't take a break. Like I have to like just power through, like that's how I work. And I'm like, okay, sure. But no, I would definitely recommend scheduling in some breaks, right? Knowing kind of when your down curve is and sort of your rhythms and taking a little break, even if it's just, for 5 minutes to stand up and stretch and take a walk and, eat something, drink something, whatever. Yes, definitely. Take some breaks. Studying alone or with others. again, I feel like there's big sort of individual differences there, that there can be, depends on who those others are and what they're doing. So for me, I was always alone. But for other students, those others, if it's a focused group of friends and they're like, you see them all sitting there studying and they're focused and they're going to help you, or you're all studying the same thing. And so when you get stuck, you have someone right there that you can sort of talk things out with. That can be really effective. So I think that, again, it sort of really depends on sort of who those others are. Are they just going to be distracting you and you end up talking about things that are completely unrelated, or are they like, focused and they're going to help you out? Is that the last? I think that might be the end of it. Yeah. Okay.
As a undergrad or grad student, did you ever cram or like?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm sure I did, but honestly, I'm not a procrastinator.
Okay.
Like, I understand procrastination. I'm friends, very close with a lot of procrastinators.
Yeah.
So I get it, but that was just never my nature. And so I don't have any memories of like staying up all night, studying or getting that paper done. I remember like even being in high school and I'd be like sitting watching TV with my parents and they'd be like, don't you like have an exam tomorrow? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. Like I'm like super good at sort of managing my time, which is a rare quality. Yeah. So yes, I would, I've got lots of advice, to give to students about sort of avoiding the staying up all night. Again, it can happen, right? Things happen, but I'm not a crammer.
What's your best advice for overcoming procrastination that you give to your students?
Oh my gosh. So breaking things down, right? And like sometimes it's like just getting started, right? So like you have this big scary paper, right? It's 10 pages. It seems overwhelming. Okay, what's your topic, right? Or like just spend 30 minutes doing some research and getting some ideas, right? Like just taking the time to like sort of break it down into what seems like manageable steps and then just getting started on the first one. And another piece of advice that I like is sometimes you want to give yourself something to come back to that is easy. Because sometimes, again, like getting started, right? Like the next day, you got to get back to it. And so it can be like, okay, don't actually completely finish this thing that you're working on. Leave the last part, the easy part, for the next day, because then you're going to have an easy way to get back into it and then get into like the harder stuff. Yeah. So I forget where I came across that piece of advice. I'm like, oh, that's actually really smart advice, right? Don't actually finish up this thing. Be like, okay, I'm going to get back to this tomorrow. I'm going to wrap this up and then go on to the next thing, because it can just make it easier to get back into the rhythm.
I think that's a great tip. I mean, when I was in grad school, I had classmates who really struggled with procrastination and it felt like there was something a little bit deeper, like a perfectionism or something.
Yeah.
That was,
for sure. There can be, I mean, it's all emotional, right? It's not like they don't know what to do, right? Or you don't know what to do. It's
or sometimes that advice can fall on deaf ears because you're not really getting to the core issue there. But that's really interesting. Just shifting gears here, a lot of students are finding it really challenging these days to get research opportunities or even volunteering. Do you have any advice for students on how to approach professors or grad students for these opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, you want to be plugged into as many different networks as you can be, right? So, again, going to a professor's office hours just so that they kind of get to know you a little bit, or if there's teaching a class that you're interested in, maybe getting some research experience. Same with the TAs. The TAs can sometimes, students can find them a little bit more accessible or a little less intimidating. Not that you should be intimidated to go talk to your professors, but go talk with your TAs. And again, the TAs, will then, if an opportunity comes up and they know you because you've been like regularly attending office hours, or it helps you get your foot in the door, don't be afraid to sort of send out those cold emails to different professors or lab managers or whoever is, doing the type of research that you think, hey, that's kind of really cool. One piece of advice that I'll often give is, you can just ask if if they have an open kind of weekly lab meeting, like are you able to attend? And then it's not a big ask. It's usually if there's enough seats in the room or whatever, it's like, sure.
So I could just ask do you remember where you were?
I try to remember. Yeah. So one piece of advice I'll give to undergrads, you're just trying to like get your foot in the door, will be just ask if they can attend lab meetings for the lab group. And then it can be, if any opportunities open up, right? They're like, oh, well, you're like familiar, right? Or they're already there. And then again, just making sure you're plugged into any listservs, right? So like we have our psychology department listserv, so opportunities. So if any labs are recruiting, or we'll get lots of emails from, hospitals or things around if anyone's looking for volunteers who they think psych students might be, really sort of a good fit for this. Those opportunities will come up. So again, just making sure that you're plugged into all those listservs, and just don't feel defeated if you don't hear back right away or if it takes a little while, because it can be hard, right? It's all about sort of just being in the right place at the right time. And so again, just trying to reach out and to network and to join different clubs and extracurriculars and things where that might come up. It's a good thing to do.
Professors get so many emails, so many students applying to labs. Like, what's your best advice for someone who's crafting an email to a professor to ask for a research position?
So I'm going to start with what not to do. Okay. So what not to do is because this will happen, is where you get an email and that like every other faculty member has been like BCC'd on this exact same email, right? And it's like, I'm interested in research. And like, I think, right. And it's like so vague. And so it's just, I'll try to respond to the students sometimes if I have the time and be like, okay, I'm going to tell you what to do. That's going to be like a better thing to do. It's like, take some time to think about who's doing the types of research, right, that you're interested in. Take a little bit to like go to their website, see the types of research questions that they're pursuing, show that you've done a little bit of homework and that you like are genuinely interested in this particular type of research that's going on in the lab. You don't want it to be like a huge, like a lengthy email, right? But just like a little bit about yourself, a little bit about why you're interested in working, with this particular professor or in this particular lab, right? That shows that you've done a little bit of that background work. And then, leaving, don't be like, so best thing to do, what you want to do is do a little bit of research into that lab, right? The type of research questions that they're pursuing or methods that they're using, show that you have like a genuine interest in the type of research that's going on in that laboratory. Tell them a little bit about yourself, right? Again, why you're interested. And then, share some, be like, what, I'd love to, if you have time to meet, or if you have a lab meeting I could drop by, or if you want me to send any like additional information about myself. But you just want to be very clear and like have a well-written email, right? Like address the professor by name, double check it for spelling errors and things, because all of these things are going to matter, right? You're like forming that first impression, right? And that's going to matter. So just taking the time to craft again, it doesn't have to be lengthy by any means, but just like a really clear, coherent email that prof or lab manager, whoever emailing might be like, oh, this person sounds like they kind of really know what they're talking about, or are genuinely interested, and they've taken this class and gotten a great grade or something, anything that you can do to sort of set yourself apart, and then kind of see what happens. Because again, you never know.
What do you recommend, like attaching CV, transcripts?
You can, honestly, that initial email, it might not even be worth it. Like, I don't know if someone's going to bother looking at this. You can be like, I'd be happy to send those along. I mean, there's no harm in attaching it, and whether they look or not, who knows? That's you can leave that up to them. I would like, especially if you have an amazing transcript and that's going to work in your favor, go ahead and sure, throw that on there. Yeah. But otherwise I wouldn't worry too much about it in that like initial kind of email. Yeah.
How many emails do you get, let's say, in a month from students? Like, just curious, like if you ballpark how much contact you're getting.
I have no idea. And it really, like right now is like delightful because my email is so, like during the school year, it can be nuts. And there can be particular times in the semester where like I'm pretty good at, looking through my email and responding to emails. I will lose track of things and have to have someone email me again. And I always feel terrible. But it's, if I'm teaching 3 classes, I've got the huge Psych 100 class and things, it can be a lot of email. But during the summer is like the nice, sweet slow down because I don't teach over the summer. And so it's very nice right now. So it's just, there's such variability. Right. I don't know, like some days I'm sending out 50 emails and other days it's, a couple.
Right.
I mean, strategically for a student, is the summer a good time to contact?
I've been talking right now with students who are interested in doing like an individual project with me in the coming fall. Right now is like a really great time. Oh, okay. And so I've had like students might reach out to me earlier in the year and I'll be like, can you email me again in May, right? When I have time to kind of like actually sit and have a conversation with you and focus on that and start planning for what my plans might be like for the next year. So so I think like May, June, really great time to be thinking about, right, your plans for September and making those connections. Right. Yeah.
No, you kind of touched upon different pathways in psychology. I'm just curious if you can comment on what you see as the value of a psychology degree in today's job market.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm guest editing a special issue of a journal right now. I'm just going through the letters of intent that like came in, but so it's a special issue of Scholarship of Teaching and Learning in Psychology, and it's what's the value of a bachelor's degree in psychology is a special issue. And there's such interest in that. Like, this is something that so many faculty members are thinking about. And I think there's so much value in a bachelor's degree in psychology. I think that it lends itself well to so many different career pathways that you can pursue after getting that bachelor's degree. So if you've really focused on psychology, that you can go on to pursue a master's in so many different fields, right? And I see my students go on and pursue masters in so many different fields, so public policy or global health or social work or counseling or, all sorts of different things. I think psychology also pairs really nicely with so many other like majors and so many other disciplines, and that it can really help set you apart. So, being in, and even in engineering or something, and then also having that psychology background, right? That's like giving you a piece, like an understanding of human behavior that's going to help you help set you apart, right? Or with HR, anything business related or sales or marketing, or like so many other things, right? Criminology, obviously like neuroscience and things. But yeah, I think psychology pairs so well with other things that I think there's such value in a psych degree.
Is there like an example of a student that pops into mind that has like a really, really unique niche like career path from a psychology degree?
So one student who comes to mind, because I had her come in and give a talk, a really well-attended talk this year to psychology students. She's currently at OISE getting I think she's working on her PhD now, but she was in psychology. She also, oh my gosh, she has a minor or did another major in, I forget now what it is. It's like visual studies or something like that. But she's done all this really awesome consulting work with like children's programming. So like cultural consulting or just learning consulting. Like, so in this, there's so much work and thought that goes into children's programming, like educational content, right? What's the level at which we need to pitch this? What is, how do we avoid stereotypic depictions of individuals and so on? And so she's done all sorts of consulting with like Nickelodeon and Netflix and Disney. And so she's like carved out, she has like a website and things. So she's carved out a really interesting path for herself.
That's super cool.
And and they're like, I teach a careers-ish class, and I like to bring in lots of alumni. So I bring in her in. I've got folks someone who's a physiotherapist. So she did a co-degree. I think she was like a human bio major and a psych major. And she applies those both now so much in the work that she does. So I'm like blanking out. Anyway, lots of different alumni that I bring in that are just, I try to bring in folks who like aren't necessarily, who are a little bit outside the, the pathways that students may have considered or sort of thought about.
Yeah. Well, my next question has to do with if you have any awareness of any new educational trends that you're excited about, ways of teaching people that are more novel.
Oh gosh. I mean, right now I feel like all the conversations about AI, right? Yeah. And like how we can use that, right? Faculty can use that to improve their teaching, how to teach students to use it effectively and ethically. So I feel like most of the conversations right now are all kind of circling around AI and how it's going to change things for everyone, right? And it's really hard because nobody knows exactly, right, what that's going to look like. So I think that's the huge.
What's your advice for students like using things like ChatGPT with respect to like studies or work?
Yeah. So I think it's, being really careful and thoughtful in how you're using it. So it can be really helpful for certain things. So, asking it to generate practice questions for you, right? It's going to be really good for, I think it's something like that. Or if you're confused about something in your class, asking it to explain it to you, right? So it can be very helpful in terms of like, almost like a personal tutor. I think a lot of people are using it effectively in that regard. Where you can get into trouble, I think, is if you're asking it to, to write a paper for you or something, and then it's replacing those skills that you're developing, right? And you're not going to be able to. You want to make sure it's not learning for you. Like you want to make sure you're still learning from it, right? So figuring out how to give effective prompts, right? If you're asking it to take a sentence and check, like, is that grammatical or something, like that's great, right? But you want to make sure that you're still learning the skills that you're supposed to be learning from it. And then, of course, figuring out what is acceptable, like what are okay uses, right, according to that professor versus what are uses that are not okay. In my lab course that I teach, we had it go through, we read some papers about using generative AI to generate like hypotheses in social psychology, and then seeing how different prompts work. And I had them sort of test out, like, okay, here are the parameters like for this assignment. Feel free to like get some ideas from ChatGPT or whatever AI you're using. And if you do, just like let me know if you use them, right? Like you should give me the prompts that you used, and let's talk about it. Yeah, there's all sorts of ways to incorporate, but yeah, you just want to be very thoughtful about how you're doing that. Yeah.
I think something that we're also really interested in is like financial psychology, psychology of money, and investing as well. Are you open to sharing your personal journey and approach to financial wellness as a professor?
Gosh, I don't know that I have much to say, but honestly, I mean, I was pretty lucky as a student. Like going, grad school can be expensive, depending on your circumstances. I was lucky enough to get fellowships and then to get teaching opportunities and things that I came out of grad school and was able to immediately pay off all my OSAP debt before it started earning interest. And then, like anything else, I think it's all about forming good habits. So good spending habits and good saving habits. So, as one example, so I've got two 10-year-olds, and I, sometimes we'd be like, oh man, we should really be putting into like their RESPs. And sometimes we'd remember at the end of the year to like max it out. Sometimes we wouldn't. And I was like, what am I doing? And I was like talking to my financial advisor, and I'm like, okay, yes, we need to make this automatic, right? So like it needs to just be taken out of my bank account so that I don't have to think about it, right? Yes. And it's like now it just goes and it's done. And I'm like, oh, thank God, I don't have to think about that anymore. Making good habits for yourself, or just setting up those habits, right, automatically, so that you're saving, right? You're putting money into your TFSA, or those types of things. So yeah, and then just spending within your limits, right? Knowing, right, just forming good habits. Yeah.
What's your perspective on the relationship between money and happiness?
Oh gosh. So you need a certain amount of money, right, to not be worried about it all the time, right? So, but then, so I think there's probably a really good correlation up to a point. And then beyond that, everyone's going to have their own definition of success. But like, to me, it's like, I've got enough money to do the things that I care about, that I'm, it's not like a super big priority for me. Like so I think it like kind of peaks out at some point, or you're always, you can get yourself into situations where you're always like, someone's always going to have more, right? Or be doing more there to, making those like social comparisons where you're like, well, they have this, should I, look at like the car that your neighbors drive and be like, why am I driving this thing? Right. And I'm like, oh, right, I'm driving this because I don't care about my car. Like, right. So just like really being aware of kind of what your priorities are, right? What your values are. So again, not to say that money's not important. Of course it's important, right? It's incredibly important. And there's so many people who, especially living in a city like Toronto, are spending all their money on rent, right? Or can't afford food, or relying on food banks and so on. And so it's definitely important, but once you have enough, it's not everything.
For sure. Just as my final question, do you have like a memorable teaching moment or a student story that really stuck with you throughout the years?
Oh gosh. So I really love at the end of the semester, I get a really interesting mix of emails, which are some, the desperate, is there anything I can do to save my grade or to improve things type emails. And then there are, and I got so many this semester, I feel like, the like just gratitude emails, which are so nice. And I can't tell, like I'm always like so grateful for students who take the time to write about how the class impacted them, or, and so the best, some examples that come to mind are like a student who I maybe taught in first year, and then I've like teach them in fourth year, and they've like taken multiple courses with me, and just like sharing kind of their journey and like what an impact that had. I have a note in my office that I keep on my desk. It's from, oh my gosh, many, many, many years ago. And it was just, I don't know who wrote it. It's like in paper and pencil. It was like the end of a lecture, and someone just like, I don't know who like dropped it on my lecture podium. But I keep it there when I need to like remember, like when I get stressed, or I'm like, why am I doing this? Like how much this matters. And it's like, so something like, dear Dr. Denton, like, because I had spent some time talking about resources and things. Anyway, it was like, you you saved my life. Like I went and got help because of what you said. Like I did what you told us to do and I went and got help. Like you saved me. And I like anyway. And so like that sits on my desk. It's just the moments of like you never know when something you say is going to have such a big impact, right? And a lot of the time you might never know because they're not going to take the time to like write a note. But yeah, small things that are almost nothing to you can be really sort of life-changing or really make a difference for someone. And so it's those little stories that really, kind of stick with you.
Now, if you could give a message to psychology undergrads, like a hopeful message, what would it be?
Oh gosh. I mean, don't be afraid to go and speak with your professors, right? And to make those connections and to go outside of your comfort zone a little bit, like outside of your shell, outside of your comfort zone, because so many times when I hear from students about the things that kind of changed them or really sort of shifted trajectories for them, it was like they put themselves into a little bit of an uncomfortable situation, right? They stretched themselves a little bit, right? They went out and did, they sent that email, they joined that club, they went to that event, and it, they were in the right place at the right time, and it completely sort of shifted things for them. So don't be afraid to sort of try new things and put yourself out there.
Yeah. Where can our listeners find out more about you and learn more about you, like your work? Yeah.
I used to have a website and then I killed it because I kind of know. So I don't have a good website anymore. So, I mean, I have a page obviously at U of T and you can just send me an email if you want to connect or chat. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. I think students are going to really be inspired by your journey and also your messages to them. And thank you so much for all you've been doing for the teaching profession as well.
My pleasure.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
With you.